Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of By the Fire, where I, Ken, your host, take you through mythical tales and creatures from across the Black diaspora. Welcome to another episode. I don't know why I sang that the second time. I'm just kind of excited to talk about this one because I was meant to give you guys this episode last week, but university, she said no. She said, rest sis, rest. So I said okay. So I'm back, I'm better, I'm refreshed. And yes, today I'll be talking about Vampires Vs The Bronx, which is a Netflix distributed film that came out on October 2nd this year. And it's about a group of young friends from the Bronx who fight to save their neighborhood from gentrification and vampires, written and directed by Osmani Rodriguez. So this is the second and final film for my Halloween film series. I know I was meant to bring like 3 or 4, but like I said, your girl has other things to do, like study. So I chose this film because, as mentioned in previous episodes, I wanted to bring out horror from across other countries that aren't as mainstream, and I came across this film online, I think, because someone said, oh, a horror film about vampires in the Bronx, and I thought, okay. I saw the trailer, it just appealed to me because it screamed authenticity, and it talks about gentrification, which is a big problem, you know, across urban communities. So yes, I really hope you enjoy this episode. Vampires vs. The Bronx stars Jaden Michael, Gerald Jones III, and Gregory Diaz IV, as well as my girl, I say my girl as if I know her, but Coco Jones. If you know who Coco Jones is, if you watch Let It Shine, if you know, that's what I said, like, she is an icon to like every black girl who had Disney Channel back in the 10s. Dare I say 2012? Yes, it was 2012. So Vampires vs. The Bronx, of course, is a horror / comedy. It's quite lighthearted in terms of the horror. Do we see any blood? It's a rated 12 film. Did I see any blood? Nothing crazy, nothing gruesome for a 12 film. But, you know, if I could watch it... Did I watch it at night? No, I didn't. I don't think I had a chance to watch it at night. Just in case they wanted to add something to scare me, I said, you know what? I'm going to be that girl who watches horror during the day. So, in my opinion, it was a really great film. I love the writing. The film discussed gentrification very clearly, whilst also bringing in the horror of having vampires amongst you. What I loved about the film and about films in general is that or media in general, is that people don't realise or like to be naive and think that films don't have a political agenda, but a lot of media that we consume do, including horror. And vampire films tend to be made at times of financial crisis, as the creatures represent rich upper class folks who leech off the poorer people for their own gain. And this film literally shows that. The vampires are gentrifiers who buy local businesses in the Bronx and then move in with their very unknown agenda, but they actually end up killing the people they are buying from. So I love how they showed the parallels and weren't afraid to make just a simple symbolic film like, ooh, the vampires, what does that imply, you know? No, instead Rodriguez actually made it very clear that he was very much against the displacement of poor black and Latino people. So as the film title suggests, not even suggests, lets you know, it's set in the Bronx, and the Bronx is a borough in New York City. Experienced some redevelopment starting in the 1990s and preceding a more recent period of gentrification. So according to Google, gentrification is the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing and attracting new businesses, often displacing current inhabitants in the process. And like I mentioned before, it is a problem in many urban communities around the world. The film was able to like illustrate that so clearly. One scene that I remember vividly was a woman selling ice cream out of, I don't know what they called it, ice cream stand to a young boy, and then all of a sudden this massive van drives by with like this really nice ice cream, and then the boy who's about to buy from her leaves her place and goes to the van. So that scene was witnessed by Jaden Michael's character, who Jaden played Miguel. In terms of costume design, the vampires wore all black, of course, and they were giving me very morbid looks, particularly the vampire Alexis, who was played by Adam David Thompson. So Alexis had long white hair, you know, very pale, very much like, I don't like sunlight. I only have blood for a living. I probably lived on Earth for 400 years. So, you know, that typical vampire look, you know? And then the protagonists, the boys and the girls, were very much in normal everyday clothes. You know, these kids, they were about 14 to 16, so there was nothing like outrageous about their dress style, very much the times as well, which is quite cool. And then my favourite character was Gloria, and she was played by Imani Lewis, and she was a vlogger on her own platform, and she was very much like kind of me. I kind of saw myself in her, because she was, I mean, I'm not gonna like toot my own horn, but she was so outgoing. She was always at the scene, and she just had the coolest style. You know, she had the braids, she had purple in her hair at some point, her edges were laid updo and hoops. Like, she was the typical black girl, just trying to be a creative and using her own platform. So at the end of the film, Gloria on her Glow TV platform says something quite profound, and she says, "Oh, and to all invaders, you don't want no smoke with the BX. Kidding." And I was like, oh my gosh, the BX, because that's like is that an acronym for Bronx? Is acronym the right word? Hopefully. But yeah, she was cool. She had the pink in her hair. So the soundtrack of the film featured quite a lot of Latinx music, which makes sense because the writer himself is from the Dominican Republic, and that makes sense to set the scene of the community of being in the Bronx. So they had songs such as Uno Dos Tres by Bentley Foy and You Already Know by Lazaro Colon. So one thing that stood out to me was Coco Jones' character, and she was called Rita. And one thing I just thought, ooh, about was that she mentioned that she's from Haiti, or her grandma's from Haiti, and that's why she knew so much about vampires. Like, she was supposedly trained for this moment, and I thought, ooh, vampires in Haiti, what could she be talking about? Because obviously in previous episodes I've talked about vampires that aren't the typical Bram Stoker ones. I've talked about vampires that are in Ghana, I've talked about vampires that are in Trinidad and Tobago. So after doing some research, and I basically saw that the Lagaru, which I believe I've talked about in a previous episode, but I don't think it was a vampire one. That creature is also seen as like a vampire-esque spirit from Haiti as well. It's a shapeshifter who is normally in the form of a wolf, and the name comes from the French word loup-garou, meaning werewolf. So that werewolf story is from Trinidad and Tobago, but there's also like the vampire element in the story from Haiti as well. And Haiti has just been, you know, a kind of big monument in voodoo, because like from the 16th to the 19th century, that's obviously when slavery was happening, and you know, a lot of customs that were brought over from African countries into Haiti were implemented, and that's how we became with Haitian voodoo. So it's quite interesting how Rita's grandmother was training Rita to like be prepared for vampires, because that's literally part of their history. Coco Jones' character Rita is a Haitian woman, and Haiti is filled to the brim with, you know, religious history, in terms of its voodoo and in terms of its revolution as well. So I just thought, oh, I picked up on that when she said that, and I said, yes, Rita, you better with your Haitian self. Anyway, so overall, do I recommend the film? Yes, I recommend it to anyone who wants to get a kind of light comedy mixed with authenticity from the characters and the location and the music, and also truth laced in the plot when it comes to gentrification and the effects that it has on indigenous people. So yeah, that was Vampires Vs The Bronx. So I hope you enjoyed that episode of me reviewing Vampires Vs The Bronx, and also happy Halloween. I hope you enjoy the festivity. I hope you do it safely, because 2 meters apart, people. But you know, I was coming home today and I saw the moon was kind of full, and I remembered, oh wait, there's a full moon this Halloween. Gosh, that is so cool. Now be sure to rate and comment on Apple Podcasts and follow on Spotify. Use the hashtag BTFpod so we can continue the conversation online. Also, if you have social media. You can share it to Osmani Rodriguez or any of the other characters. You can even share it to Coco Jones. Like, if she sees this, well, if she hears this, the 13-year-old me would scream. Yes, what I said is still that song. It's still in my playlist. She's that girl. Be sure to follow on By The Fire _pod on Instagram and Twitter, as well as By The Fire on Facebook, where I regularly upload proverbs from African Caribbean countries and countries in the Americas. So get to following, get to clicking. So yeah, if you have a creature or folklore you'd like to hear or would like to be a guest on the show, feel free to email By The Fire at bythefire.mail@gmail.com. Please come on to the show. I'd love to have a guest before the end of the year. So if you have any cool things y'all want to talk about with me, don't hesitate. I don't bite. And yes, thank you for tuning in to this episode, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Happy Halloween, stay safe, 2 meters apart, but remember, I don't know, don't remember anything. I never end with remember. Okay, well, I hope to catch you with me by the fire for the next episode. Bye.